to an actual Holochain account?
Yep, a public key. Yep, Holochain account. Yep. So I've just hit the record button on my screen. So who else wants to go? What do people want to do for the next 2 weeks?
Well, there's nothing else to do, so I'm planning. Sorry, Sid, to interrupt. I'm being made redundant recently, so doesn't look like it's going to be much work on. So I'm taking this opportunity to learn Holochain. So I've set it up once, but that was on Windows ages ago, and it was really hard. So I hear Linux is a better way to do it. So I'm hoping to get that started, and also maybe I'm biting off more than it makes sense at the moment. But I'm also part of a Loconomics co-op. There's an open source project called Loconomics on GitHub, and I'm thinking of migrating that to Holochain. But I just looked at how many APIs are in the existing one, and it's probably in the order of like 30 or 40 different API endpoints. So it's not a small project. So maybe I'll bite off bits. Anyway, that's to be decided, I guess.
Thanks for that. Can you share the link to that, Sam?
I'll share the link to the GitHub, and I'll share the link to the list of APIs that I've got on what's the word? Postman. I don't know if you're familiar with Postman, but basically it's just, allows you to test API endpoints, really. Let's see. Let me know if that link works for you. It might just be for my account. I'm not sure if it's public.
Notice the Loconomics site itself is very slow to load, or possibly down. I don't know.
They've recently gone away from actually having a marketplace, so the code you get on GitHub doesn't actually exist in the wild anymore.
Okay, so Loconomics.com, not a thing.
Loconomics.com is, I think it redirects you to some forum where they use that forum, you got to log in, and then you use that forum to then organize with the other loconomicators in your area. Whereas previously, when you went to loconomics.com, you just got like, here, look, what service are you looking for, blah, blah, blah. Then they realized that actually you need to create the two sides of the marketplace in order to get that working. So they've kind of used the terminology pivot to creating the community first and then marketplace later.
Is it loconomics.co, not .com? The homepage?
It's loconomics.com.
Do you want to just share that link? Because I'm only just finding the .co.
I don't see a .co.
Oh yeah, okay. It redirects to Mighty Networks at the moment.
I tried to log in and access that Postman.
That's what they're talking about. I'm not 100% across what they're doing day to day anymore. I'll share the GitHub.
Cool. That Postman link didn't work for me.
Yeah, okay, it's probably private. So that's the GitHub account. Hasn't been modified for a couple of years, so probably a good time to move it to Holochain.
Have you tinkered with or used Hilo at all, Sam?
What was that? Hilo?
Yeah.
No, I've not heard of that.
Yeah, okay. Only reason I ask is they were at the hackathon, the intensive, the year before last now, isn't it? Yeah, it's a pretty cool community management platform. And the full stack's open source, so I was sort of contemplating deploying it for the community I'm in now to see if it might get some uptake. But I'm curious, like it's sort of simple, simple user friendliness. It's like mainly a replacement for Facebook groups in my view. Discussion threads and posts and that kind of stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, that sounds very similar to what they're using at the moment, the Mighty Networks kind of thing.
Yeah. And there is a bunch of people who are actually upgrading it with some things at the moment, but it's moving towards a Holochain implementation anyway.
Otis, whereabouts are you in the world? Do you want to say what you're interested in working on?
What's tonight? Fair.
All right, cool.
Cool. Cool. Pospi, do you want to share a bit?
Yeah, I'm still kind of feeling out the situation I've landed in, and no, it's not weird to have a lurk hang around. Trying to figure out which of the many possibilities are the ones I should focus my energy on. But I have been looking at building a group agent implementation. I've put some threads on the forum today about it. So that's maybe something I can do, but
maybe you could also share your perspective on why it's important, because I honestly think not everyone grasps it.
Yeah, that's a long perspective. It's sort of like we need this sort of sweet spot where we get the best of both worlds of having your apps built in really modular pieces that are independent so that people are empowered to swap them out and change them and create different arrangements than the norm. That's pretty critical for our needs. And so with that being the case, the pattern, most people are kind of saying that's too complicated. We should just embed everything as zones in the same DNA. But I think in doing so, you make a lot of maintenance burden for yourself, because if one zone needs to be upgraded, they all have to be upgraded, and you prevent anyone non-technical from being able to recombine things in different ways. So the pattern I'm looking at is to have a network that just holds a bunch of agents, say these are all part of some group, and then a bunch of home APIs and traits to connect those DNAs with others, so that you can then say, this is the organization per se, and all these other things are peripherally hanging off it, but you have to be a member of the organization to be able to access them. So that's what I'm trying to do at the moment. And there's kind of a start to it. I can show you if you want. Where is it? Come on.
But just to understand it right, like basically any member who's part of the group agent can sign or create entries on behalf of that organization. And how would it work though? How are you envisioning this? And maybe that's what that's what you're trying to show anyway. So that would be cool.
I'll poke at code while I talk. And I'm trying to build it as separate zones that are independent, so that nothing depends on each else, because this is the one that does the agent registration. So basically this gets plumbed into the zone itself during validate agent, so that people get added to the DNA, and their agent keys are stored off an anchor so that they're indexable. And then there's a couple of query APIs you can hang off that to say, is this agent registered in this group and who's registered? And that's all that one does. It's really simple. But then this invite-only zone, I'm mixing it with the social triangulation one, which is EM's work. And this one's kind of interesting because it's a zone where you basically, when you join the network, other people in the network have to vouch for you to be in there, for you to join. So I can just whack those two things together, and then I've got registered agents that need to be validated to join. And it means that you can take the validation stuff and replace it with different validation if you have different membrane rules and different organizational requirements. So those two pieces give you a list of people in a group. The piece beyond that would probably be something very much like this. So another zone alongside all those, so that people within the group can assign and manage roles with each other. And then you can start to have those kind of permissions that you're talking about, I think, Sid, where it's like these people are admins, these people are writers, these people are readers.
Okay.
And the reason that it sort of seems important to do now is that any DNA that wants to use that pattern, which in my view is the optimal pattern, they have to understand all this API and be able to integrate it, because I think in the conversation in the architecture course this morning, I was under a lot of misconceptions as to how the capability stuff in Holochain works. And the capabilities are really just for giving people permission to do things in your DNA. So they're only, agent to agent kind of thing. So I can say, yeah, Sid's got permission to write events into my own network. And they'll still be authored by him, but they come into my network. And for this stuff, I think it actually has to be all validation side, because that's the place where you can do the things that validate within an entire group, which means then it's like a special API call that every single method in your DNA has to run and check to say, find me the connected DNA for the group, and does this person have the role that I need to run this operation? So it all kind of has to be coded manually as app logic, I think, for it to work. But that seems pretty reasonable and sensible. So I'm happy to go in that direction.
And so basically through this, I'm just reiterating, so to make sure I've understood right. This allows anyone who's part of that organization to sign an entry, and the record will show that they've signed it using their ID. But if we were to use capability tokens, it would not show. For example, if I use a capability token to write a blog at your end, it would eventually show you using your ID to sign, right? But that's the difference.
No, it would show that you have authored it on my behalf, I think, is how it ends up looking. So
but at the end of the day, on the DHT, it would have your signature, right?
No.
If you use a capability token,
there would be a signature from me saying that a record from me saying that I've authorized you to have the capabilities, so that it.
Okay.
And then after that, it would be your signature on the back.
So basically, with the group agent, the group agents that you're building, we'd be able to move to a more modular separate DNA-based system. And like you said, anyone can swap in the validation logic for whatever's useful for them. That's
what I'm going for. I don't know that. I think the validation logic actually has to sit with the registration logic, so that's a developer thing. But given the way they combine, I think it's pretty easy to just build out, like the way I've done it. There's actually no code involved in. So this one here, the invite-only agent registration. When you look at this social triangulation zone, I haven't actually an entirely empty file. I don't know that it would allow that. Like these empty steps, because it's pulling an already built zone in from elsewhere. And the way that Holochain apps there's no packaging for this yet, so you have to kind of clone everything and do it yourself. But eventually, I expect that you just be able to say, pull in the zone from this URL. This is the sharp sum of it, and so it's pretty easy to. It's only 2 metadata files really to combine the two.
Thanks.
But the other things. Oh, sorry.
So, pospi, thanks. So, given your proposed architecture, if you're using a zone which gets changed, do you have to immediately update your app, or are you still pointing to the old zone because you actually copied it into your application?
The zone in this case being the app zone, like say it's a blog, it's where the posts are, that kind of thing.
I guess so. Yeah, I might be using the wrong terminology.
No, it's all a bit ambiguous. Yeah, no, you don't really have to change anything because the group module DNA is separate from the post one. You can upgrade the post one or swap it out, and you just say the identifier of this DNA to map it. So yeah, there's no need to change anything much in an upgrade. But there's a couple of forum threads I might send through because a lot of this stuff is kind of unknown and not so doable at the moment. One thing that's not clear is how do you force one DNA that it has to use this other particular DNA rather than people just being able to plug in whichever one they want. Because obviously if they can plug in whatever group they want to say they've got access, then it defeats the whole purpose. So that one needs to be addressed. And what's the other one? Just the limitations in bridging at the moment. You can only kind of bridge things on a one-to-one basis. So I can have a group that manages a whole discrete network, but I can't allow other groups to join the same network yet. So that's the other piece that's missing there. Muted.
Sorry, that's the conversation we've been having about using signals, right? Eventually.
Yeah, I think so.
To move towards bi-directional bridging.
Yeah. I actually have like a whole set of issues on GitHub in ROEA about bi-directional. I kind of went quite deep into what the requirements might be for that. I've lost the Zoom again. There we go. Anyway, keep talking. I'll find following links.
What do you want to do, Sid? What are you thinking?
Yeah, for those who don't know, we've been building reputation systems for an agent-centric world. And some of that is on our website. That's sacred.capital. But just the last couple of weeks, I feel like I've been quite energized and excited by a few things that have been coming together. So I'm really excited by the idea of modularity within Holochain. And with agent-centric reputation, I think it allows reputation to start generating network effects. So I've been shaping this thought of what we call neighborhoods, and I think businesses as an organizing principle breaks down in an agent-centric world, and instead I think an organizing principle like neighborhoods starts taking starts getting more relevance. Let me share actually a bit of what I've been stitching together. I can share this link with you guys. But traditionally, you've always had, an app, and let's say you have, a Reddit style app that's built on Holochain. You have different communities that plug into Reddit, have to, comply with the reputation systems that Reddit imposes upon people. But I think that that's limited, and in an agent-centric paradigm, it allows for a lot more. And so let's say there's another community, instead of that community having to use Reddit or HackMD or Postman or GitHub, or maybe even, or different supply chain tools. Instead, this community leverages multiple generic monetary and technical tools in order to fulfill what it wants to do. So the key shift is best summarized here. Like, I think apps provide specific tech and generic culture. Like when you use Reddit, you just have to use the reputation system that they use. But neighborhoods flips that around, and so you can move to specific culture and generic tech. And,
that's great. That's really good, Nick. Yeah.
I like that. Like I've been very enthused by that. And so, with some help from Pospi, trying to bounce this off to him. But really pushing for this modular approach where, if there's a community, let's say like a permaculture community or just an online community that wants to use generic tech for, maybe thread-like discussions, instead of going to another app, they can just call these microservices and utilize them. Or maybe HackMD-like tools, or maybe monetary tools provided by Holochain, maybe crowdfunding tools provided by Investor Engine, that kind of thinking. And what's interesting is that community gets to articulate what kinds of cultures are required within the community. Maybe there's subcultures and subgroups as well, but they get to articulate it. And so when a user enters a community, they don't, they don't really have to enter as strangers, but they can actually stake their reputation into that community. And I think that is really cool, because the reputation vault plays an interesting role there, because the reputation vault allows a user to navigate communities as they enter different communities. So, and I think that models real life, right? Like we all are part of different communities, but we don't enter this community as this blank slate. Like we carry our previous context into it. And we're not like, if we're a group of friends, we decide what the dominant culture is within this community. Like we're not beholden to what Facebook or Reddit decide is good or not good, or what needs to be amplified or what doesn't need to be. So that's kind of the vision for neighborhoods. I think it leverages some of the reputation stuff we've built with Sacred Capital. I think it leverages like the generic tools that are coming up through some of the hackathons, leverages some of Holochain stuff. And I'm also excited by this thought of like this reputation vault, which is kind of like, I think that's money for the new economy, right? Like reputation as a currency. So it's been fun putting that together. I think the next couple of weeks, I would really love all the help, like debating this. Like yesterday, some of the inputs Pospi gave me was, each community shouldn't be thinking about just building one DNA, monolithic DNA for themselves. It should be like a collection of different DNAs. I also think like these tools, like the Reddit-like tools or HackMD-like tools, they shouldn't be zones, but they should just be like almost microservices that they call from other DNAs. So this modularity or this ability to bridge across DNAs is super critical, and which is why I've been asking some of the questions around group agents, which is why today on the call with Art, I think it was really refreshing to hear. I don't know what you made of it, Pospi, but it was really refreshing to hear his. I think he's also sees value in a modular approach, which was refreshing to see, to be honest.
I think that's always been something goal. And I chucked the last link in the chat is the user story that is the exact requirement for what you're describing, as to why we need separate DNAs.
Yeah.
At least in an economic context, anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, I think this is like, I think I'm just mulling over this, maybe like more publicly speaking about neighborhoods once the architecture is refined a bit and we have clarity on what is needed. I think it's landing well with a lot of people. Like the idea of like these, I think people are tired of this generic global internet where everyone can attack you and see your content without irrespective of context, but instead like moving towards these contextual spaces. I think more and more people want a safer internet, and I think that's that I feel like it's going to land well with people. So I'm excited about that. Yeah, and hopefully I'll start throwing this up a little bit more on the forums as well. I had a question, but I can't remember what it was. Yeah, on the modular, like Pospi, what do you make of Guillaume's questions about modularity, like some of the stuff about warrants and some of the other issues he raised? They seemed like legitimate. They seemed like legitimate.
Definitely. Yeah, the warrant stuff is kind of the most technically challenging one of those, I think. The issue being that warrants don't go between DNAs. So if your group membership is over here and your voting or reputation is over here and you hack that and get banned, you don't get banned from the group. So yeah, I wonder if it's going to spark some implementation of warrant signaling between DNAs maybe.
And right now it seems like the Holochain warrant system is pretty basic, right? Like you can't, like there's no plans to make it go across DNAs or anything of that sort.
Yeah, not that I know of, but I do wonder if there's like if the new event system gives us an event that gets fired on a warrant being sent, then you can probably hook into that and write an entry, and then the entry gets broadcast, so you can trigger off that maybe in the other DNA.
And at the end of the day, isn't like if it's the same agents who view the same agent ID spilling over into another DNA, wouldn't that be flagged in the other DNA as well? Like, say I've hacked my reputation DNA and I now start manipulating the content DNA. Wouldn't, for someone like you who has flagged my agent ID in the reputation DNA, like wouldn't you be able to flag that in the content DNA as well? Like, can't there be some kind of bridging system for that?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's what the open question to Holochain core is, but I don't know that that's necessarily a good idea because those collaboration spaces might be very independent. It's like I'm in this community, but I hate the community next door, and I do something malicious in there. Like I don't want to be banned from my community,
But I think that could be like a form of reputation staking, right? Like if you are part of the Holochain community, for example, then it's essential that this particular red flag is like spills over across DNAs or something of that sort. And particularly like if you're warranted or called out for hacking, like it should spill over. But I guess that is more core work and not something that can be applied.
Could it depend on how connected the different communities are? I don't know if that's a measurable.
Like I think these are connected communities. So we're talking about like say within a community, there's one DNA for content, one for reputation. Like they're all subgroups of that same community. So my sense is they would be connected, and so that community could actually take a macro view and say, if you're red flagged in one, like it's necessarily spills over into all the other DNAs. But I think what Guillaume's suggesting is something like that, and possibly suggesting that should be more Holochain cores work, like the warrant should be designed in that way. But at this point, it's not.
Yeah, and probably potentially it would be something that you declare as a programmer to say that, you know, like a bridge configuration, a warrant propagation configuration or something. Because I guess, you know, that if you don't do it that way and it's automatic, then there's an attack vector where you can create some other DNA and trigger a warrant in it with the same name as another one, get yourself banned in different places that you weren't expecting. I don't know.
Yeah, that could be thought through. In general, though, like with modularity, just as an entrepreneur, I feel like I'm comfortable with some of these risks around Sybil attacks, lack of warrants, because I feel like the growth trajectory is going to be pretty slow, and so we can actually work with these and start building them in. Like, I don't like, oh, that's the way I lean. I think for someone else who's trying to build an app and roll it out to millions, like I don't think that would work. But like,
can you just clarify what you mean by warrants? Is that the immunity system thing, or is that something different?
Yeah, it's basically if you hacked your app and
break the validation
maliciously.
rules, then there's a warrant out. Is that how it works?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so what we're talking about is trying to create different DNAs within the same community. And so you might hack like your reputation DNA and start giving yourself like crazy claps or votes or whatever, which entitles you to a whole bunch of privileges in the other DNAs, like spamming content or governance related DNAs. And right now, warrants are restricted to the DNA. So if I hack my reputation DNA, it's just triggered and everyone within the reputation DNA is made aware, like it doesn't spill over into the others. And so we're trying to figure, ideally, like that should be Holochain Core's work. But yeah.
So somehow these warrants need to be public for any DNA to look at that DNA.
Well, not public, but maybe like if we're within a community and that community has, I don't know, 10 different DNAs, like maybe all those 10 need to be made aware of this.
Yeah.
But the question is how we do it. Like, should we be making patchwork solutions ourselves, or should it be built into like Holochain Core?
Yeah. Was this what was discussed on the architecture course this morning?
No, this was actually a question. You can see the link that I just sent. So Guillaume raised these questions. And I think it, like to some extent it came up in the architecture course.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this is just open. And I feel like the way people are landing on these issues is how much they want modularity versus for those whom it's not very critical. Like I don't think they like modularity isn't critical. I think of it as a big issue, but others don't. Yeah.
Yeah, no, cheers. I mean, why are you saying that these warrants can't just be public to the whole world just because it's better? You still want to create this permissions, like just as a starting point, and then sort of pull back on the privacy side.
That is a good question. I
as we discover why.
Like I may not be hacking an app out of malicious intent. Like there might be cases where I just wanna, I don't know, and maybe others have better answers.
You got to account for just poor code as well. You know, like if someone has a bad app that issues warrants when it shouldn't, then that gets triggered and maybe hurts you elsewhere. But I mean, if the system automatically namespace the warrants based on the zone or DNA or both probably that they originate in, then it's sort of not an issue because you can't have conflict then. Maybe.
Hey Sid, that link you shared, the last one, I can't access it.
Oh.
Yeah, the architecture course is a private group, it's annoying.
I'll find the link that you can go and request to be a member of the architecture course, Sam.
Okay.
There's also that first one that I posted is I brought it into the public light, so that's where I tried to move the discussion to.
Sorry, which? Say that again, Pospi.
The first link there, the best practices and patterns for app modularity, that's where I moved that discussion out to.
Oh yeah, I started reading that just now. That was the last one on the forum.
It's a bit of a wall of text.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I feel a little bad for you, Sam. You're just getting new to all this, and we're diving into the guts of the deepest parts.
Well, I've signed up for. Yeah, where do we talk about actually building an app? So but seriously, if I am going to get started, I actually shared my, let me paste it now. So I've shared I've got a public link for that thing I tried to give you before. So it's just a bunch of APIs. Let me just check it's working on you. Right, that should work. I did it in incognito window and everything.
Nice. By the way, hi Michael, whoever you are. Nice to have you here. Oh, that was too much.
Yeah.
So they're all in folders, but you can see there's a lot of work there. But what I'm planning to do is to start going through like the simple ones and maybe say, show me a list of service providers maybe as a start. So it's moving away from the architecture side of things, more kind of like, I guess I haven't really even got to the bottom of where to get the basics from. I'm assuming that's on Holochain website somewhere.
I hope you're okay with us all knowing your economics password, Sam.
Oh, really? Where is it?
It's in the login request.
Yeah, it's just a dummy one.
Okay, good.
I'm saying that, checking it now. Yeah, that's just a dummy one.
Yeah, my answer to your question is I just try to start forum threads and tell people what's happening and post a GitHub link and then see if anyone gets interested. There's a category on libraries under technical discussion. That's where I put most of them because most of the things I'm doing are fairly small. But there's also app development for the broader stuff. Maybe not that. Maybe? Or maybe even in that, actually in the Haps channel, that's probably the better place.
All right, so on the forum.
Yeah. There's like a whole grid of registered projects at the top, but underneath that it looks like there's just a normal thread. I did see this Hemp for Future Media one the other day, so... do you want to riff a bit on some economics and business stuff, Sid? Because you gave me some thoughts when you were talking before.
Yeah, always.
I don't mean to fail. If people want to not do that, we can not do that.
I actually think this is a good group for it. It's going to be a good conversation.
Yeah, well, a couple go on the business course, right?
Yes, sounds good.
I guess, like we talked about a while ago about the pattern that seems to be emerging with the way that value creation in Holochain apps works. And Noah from CoMakery was reflecting on experiences and visibility of the Ethereum ecosystem. And saying that, watching the way that consensus failed, and Tom and I worked there, so we saw it fail from the inside. Like there was this problem, an economic problem, where Ether was the funding, and a lot of the apps, all they really did was pump the value of Ether. So there was an incentive for the funders to hold on to the ether rather than paying the app developers because the creation of apps was making the ether more valuable. And over the time that led to scarcity and, it all kind of dried up. Whereas in Holochain, when you look at Holofuel and Joules, the way they work is that the value isn't actually created until the real thing has been done. And then, so like you put money into the Holo network, you can't withdraw it. Yeah, I couldn't hear you actually, so you can't withdraw it until it's been used to do some hosting. So the token is a promise that what has happened in the past will continue, and it's kind of like as little speculation as you can have. Like it's only 1 degree removed from reality. And it solves that issue of the only value that's being created is pumping the value of hollow fuel, thus leading to poverty over the long term, because for Joules, say, it's based on the food they're producing, so they've got their own value and their own separate their own separate value creation externally to that that's driving their business plan. And then what you're saying about some of the conversations in the business ones, for me, I kind of giggle looking at that, because what it really means is that, the time from which you can basically put corporate enclosure around things and monetize them purely from a place of holding them away from public consumption is kind of over, because you can fall and all that stuff. Because of that. What did you call it? Membrane? No, something else.
No, moat. There's no moat.
No moat, yeah. What that means is that you just have to have what I would call a real business plan, right? Like if you want to make money from your business has to generate some value that behaves in a way that's at least similar in some fashion to Holofuel or Joules, in that it has to create real value that is separate from the app hosting. And maybe it's not separate from the app hosting, because there are digital services that you can provide as a business that have value to a network that you can charge for access to, because you're rid of that data. That to me seems the model. Like, you have to create something that's really useful. If you're just trying to sell some software that you're holding, can't really do it anymore. So it's sort of like a new business time, maybe. I don't know.
I think that brings us to the question of what is value in the virtual world, right? And I think over the last few years, we've all moved to this space where the value of the virtual world is just the network effects. Hi! Hi! How are you doing?
Hi, Alex.
Look, it's Sam.
Oh.
She's about to go for a swim.
Oh, really?
Alright, do you want to go now? You got to say Haley. Thank you very much. Go put those togs on.
How's she dealing with the whole lockdown situation?
I mean, we got a pretty big property here. There's a pool, and there's another section of it that she can go into, and there's a 2.5-year-old over there that she can go and play with as well, and
nice.
And then there's one next door, so that it's fine. And then she goes and sees her mother as well, so I think she's just doing, I don't think she notices anything.
That's nice.
So I'll just take her away, because this is...
No, don't worry. It's okay.
But you can see she's definitely got a lot more communication.
Yeah. Getting in on the Holochain game.
Yeah. Alrighty, that's enough. That's enough. Say bye-bye. Say
Bye-bye. See you later,
Bye-bye.
everyone. See you
Bye, Alex.
later, everyone.
Sorry, there were. Value in virtual networks. But I was just saying, like, I think over the last few years, people kind of realized like there has to be this race to go out and grab community. So today an Uber is an Uber because everyone, there's just this name recall and there's users and taxi drivers that it kind of grabbed onto, and so there's value in the network. And I think in the early days of a tech project, just the fact that they roll out an app and get people on it gives them that moat, and that's why investors are comfortable funding them. But I think, for example, if you allow cloning and forking in the Holochain ecosystem, it just breaks that. Let's say, Tom creates an investor engine and is rolling it out, and someone like Sid comes along, forks the app, and is just better at fundraising than Tom, and races to, I don't know, 1 million users before Tom can. And I think that kind of breaks all the research and all the code building, all the effort and capital that is spent in building that code, right? And so that's what I was trying to point out to David. And don't get me wrong, but I think cloning and forking is great. But I just think that model of big tech kind of breaks down. Like, that's what I was trying to draw. Like, I think businesses will have to be very itty-bitty and, like you said, start generating capital and maybe more cash flow driven rather than investor driven. Or they'll have to be more large in infrastructure. Like a hollow host today can't be replicated because it's massive. Like, it has this big community and identity associated with it.
Yeah, it's like the community that creates the value, right?
Yeah.
But it also occurs that the real value is not in the app so much as the data in these situations, because you fork a network, you don't get to keep the data with you.
Or you don't get to bring the network with you either. It's really the network that provides.
Yeah, I think it's the network. Yeah, but I think what I was highlighting is just in the early days, like, no app has a network. Like, everyone's just like, let's say you spent a year developing an app and you already roll it out, and someone with capital just forks it and runs ahead. Like, they have a head start. And I think that is shitty. I think one way to address it is like more community-based approaches. Like, and that's something I think about the Sacred Cap. Like, I would love the investor model to be more community-driven. So, for like to reach a stage where a large enough chunk of the community thinks of themselves as having a voice, and so no one in the community necessarily thinks about like, oh, I'm just going to start and fork my own Sacred Capital version of the reputation exchange. But I think these are big issues. I'm kind of surprised they haven't been pushed and thought about earlier. But I definitely think like they will also define how we go.
What I'm scared of happening is that people fork, take a copy of the code, and they, they've already got an existing network, and then they just use it on their own network, and that's why they'll do better, because they've got the network already. And I just.
So you mean like you build the network before you roll?
No, you build Holo REA is a perfect example. You build the tech, you build all these new capacities, and then someone who comes along like a big businessman who has a big network just says, "All right, yep, I'll take that. Thank you very much. See you later." And they've got the network, and the world hasn't changed. And so protecting against that is my biggest fear, basically.
Yeah.
And how can the tech be? And that's why I think the tech needs to be anchored to identities. So that the tech can't be used without the identity, or I don't know, but like I think it's somehow I don't know the solution, but you can't just
Yeah,
go.
I don't think there is maybe even one, and so which is why it's worthwhile having that discussion. And so I've kind of raised it in a Google Doc. Tom, are you on the business course?
I'm registered, but it's 2 a.m. at night, so I just don't show up. But that's all. Yeah. But I'm planning to watch all the recordings.
Egocentric.
Yeah.
It's insane.
I was the one that requested, can we, with this hackathon, can we just have a Asia Pacific time?
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's good to have the Asia Pacific time now, and yeah, there'll be more people that show up.
Let me just
There's
share
a-
this.
While we wait, another avenue there that we've discussed with Beef Ledger, and it's, it's kind of a land grab really, but I think it's what you're saying about large scale stuff, like because they're a big industry player, there's a way that they can deploy a network and offer knowledge services that are relevant to an entire domain, and then that becomes the valuable thing that people pay as a service for, because everyone wants to be connected into the industry as a whole and link into that module. But yeah, it doesn't solve any of these problems if someone with another network comes along and goes, yoink, either.
One of the ways to solve for this, like I've been thinking about it, is especially for neighborhoods. Like I'm very interested in promoting and supporting people who are building the little generic tools. Is to kind of have a graph-like system and you kind of like track versions of and almost reward people with the reputation. And so if someone forks and generates a new microservice, like there's actually a stream of revenue that goes back to the originator as well. So it kind of creates this culture of forking, but at the same time receiving credit for it. And I think that to me is like the perfect solution, but it also requires massive amounts of collaboration, which we'll have to see how it goes. But I think it's possible. Like I feel like Holochain is attracting like a whole bunch of these widgety developers, right? Like people who aren't interested in like fundraising skills and like grabbing huge masses of users. And so it could be cool to just create some kind of reward mechanism, almost like a bounty system, both reputational and monetary, and just invite like itty-bitty developers to come in, create like little microservices, fork them, work on them, iterate them, and we kind of create the reward graph for it. But I don't know. I think that's one option that I can think of. But anyway, I think which is why like I'm trying to push the neighborhoods paradigm. Like I think some of the apps paradigm just doesn't. I don't think it works as well in this ecosystem.
How would neighborhoods work on a global, not a global, but like a contextual based style, like an example of, because I get it with the local neighborhood, that's, geolocation is very simple to understand, but how do you describe it on a contextual based?
You mean like a virtual neighborhood?
Yeah,
like
virtual neighborhood. Community? Or are you just saying just geo-local?
I mean, like someone, let's say economic kit, right? Economic kit. Like today, an economic kit is a group of people like sharing ideas. But it's unfortunate that economic kit has to use Reddit, not Reddit, but HackMD or like Lumio or different kinds of tooling. Instead, it would be kind of cool for economic kit to just have its own space to operate and pull in these tools for their discussions, as opposed to having to go to places for these discussions. So I think that's how I view it. And you see it everywhere. Like there's communities today who are using Facebook groups or WhatsApp groups or like spread across like places, and I think that's sucky because they have to go in and comply to everyone's culture. Yeah. Anyway, that's the direction.
Yeah, no, I'm totally in agreement. I'm going to print it out and read it and study it. What you've done, HackMD.
Yeah,
post.
Please push back. Like it's definitely in the phase where pushback is appreciated.
Yeah.
So cool. Awesome.
All right. Well, I think that was good.
Great, guys.
Thank you very much.
Cool conversation.
I'll get the recording
I'm
up.
just gonna
and that's it.
I'm just gonna copy the links. Feels like these links are really valuable.
Pretty much all of them are. The rest of
Yeah.
my day will just be studying them.
Awesome.
All right, take
Have a
care,
good
guys.
day. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Otis.
Bye, Otis.